I think we're at an all-time low in terms of trust. Employees trusting managers, employees trusting their employers, given the shakeup we had in the economic situations, the layoffs. And when I say trust, when I define trust for myself, it is really about me giving autonomy, trusting others that they got it, but also me receiving a certain level of security by earning trust. So by others trusting myself. So trust to me is more than a value. It's almost an intrinsic motivation and something that gets me going, something that I seek in my relationship. So I feel like my whole life story was shaped by a search for trust and a search for validation as well.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff Lakusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia, Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of 99 Humans. Today, I'm joined by someone really special. And I don't even know if she remembers the first time she and I met. But this was 15 years ago, so an incredible month, because actually we met during the month of March. That was 2009. And before I tell you the full story, let me ask her to introduce herself so that you can start knowing her and how amazing she is. Welcome,
Wonderful.
Kathrin.
Thank you, Nadia. Hello. I do remember the days and the start of our story and relationship back in 2009. And it's a very special one, Nadia. You continue to inspire us with your work and your podcast. You truly, I think, have a voice that inspires. So thank you first and foremost. Sharing a little bit more about myself. My name is Kathrin, currently in Germany, based here in Europe. I've went global and spent the last 15 years of my life. So from the time I met Nadia till today in 5 different countries. So I truly went global, and I'm currently a talent acquisition leader for a tech company.
That's so amazing. So here how the story went for everybody that is listening. But back in 2009, I was a headhunter in a British company, and my dream was always to work for a big corporation. I remember I was telling one of my friends, oh, I dream about having a business card with a name that everyone knows about it. And back in the days, it was like, oh, Coca-Cola or something. And I remember I did send some applications to Google in country, but no one was calling me because back in the days, I mean, I was 24. What did I know about it? And I remember that one time, I don't remember, did you email me or were you on the phone? Because what I remember is that someone from Dublin called me to be an account manager. And I said, I don't know if being an account manager is my skill set, but I know how to sell.
Exactly. Yeah. I worked with a couple of colleagues actually to headhunt you, Nadia, because we knew your talent, we knew your skill. So we contacted you, and there the story started. A wonderful career for you, and there was the start of our relationship as well.
Oh,
so yes, we emailed and called you. We hunted you down.
Well, thank you so much, because I'd say that really helped my imposter syndrome. Until then, I would have never, ever thought that I would have landed a job at Google. So it's so special that you and I stayed in contact. Anyways, the subject of this podcast is a little different. It's not my story, so all of that is about your story, Kathrin. And you do have so many of them. I know that you traveled and covered so many markets, and you were at Singapore at one point, right?
Yeah, I spent 5 years of my life in Singapore in a phenomenal Asia region.
Wow, wow. So you've seen it all. So tell a little bit for our audience, what are you up to these days? You said you're back in Germany, which is that your home country?
Yeah, Germany is my home country, correct.
Nice. And so what brought you back to Germany?
Yeah, so we moved back with our son in 2023, so just over a year ago. And I have this relentless search and appetite to discover new culture and do new crazy things, unexpected things. So I moved to Germany last year for a new job, new role, and to immerse myself in my actual home culture in my home country. So that's it. I've been the last 15 years working in talent acquisition and recruiting, and I've stayed true to that. So that is really my passion, my journey, and where I've built my personal path of passion as well as my leadership capabilities. So I'm currently based in Munich, working for a global tech company, a scale-up called Ideals.
Wow, that's amazing. Before we delve into your story, I wanted to ask you, how did you find going back home after all these years traveling? For sure, that must have been an adventure in itself.
Adventure, I think, is a really nice metaphor to express it. It was actually a shocker. Going back home to old traditional values, because I've lived in 5 different countries in 15 years, so I've evolved, but it felt like going back home, everything was still the same way it was 15 years ago. So people were in the same circles, the same relationship, the same routines, the same values, but I had to redefine myself over and over again by being really challenged myself, by rethinking my own values over and over. So it is a little bit of a friction point in finding my new niche and my new comfort zone living back in Germany, in my actual home country.
Wow. I mean, I know so many people that traveled all over the place. I mean, me included. I'm an immigrant in the United States. And I remember, I mean, in these 15 years, I lived in Dublin, I lived in Paris, and I tried going back to Italy probably 2 or 3 times. And at the end of the day, with my husband, we settled and we said, we're moving again. And it is sometimes really challenging to make peace with our roots and origins and the values that we developed, as you said, traveling, and countries that have a lot of tradition and a lot of very strong, probably sometimes even conservative approaches to life, like the European countries that, for better or for worse, have been there for thousands of years.
Yeah, that very much resonates with me, what you just said.
So I know that you have an incredible story that you prepared for our listeners. This is a podcast about true human leadership. And
Yeah.
so what do you got to share?
Yeah. So maybe let's set the scene for today. I really want to, before diving into a story and talk a little bit more about the chaotic sphere of leadership, really share why I think trust is magic in today's chaotic world. Because there is relentless change in our lives. And I am experiencing my reality of deeply human leadership as chaotic, raw, and imperfect at times. So during my journey, trust really has become one of the most valuable things that I can give to others and also that I can receive. So that's why I want to chat a little bit about trust and my trust story.
Yeah. Would you unpack really quickly when you say trust, what do you mean by that? Because I feel trust is like one of those buzzwords that we use so much in the corporate environment. And let's face it, in the tech industry, especially these days where there's layoffs constantly, there's less money on the table, growth rates are slowing down. It feels like a very strong word to demand people to have. So, what do you mean by trust and what trust means for you?
Yeah. So I think firstly, I want to actually validate what you said. I think we're at an all-time low in terms of trust. Employees trusting managers, employees trusting their employers, given the shakeup we had and the economic situations, the layoffs. And when I say trust, when I define trust for myself, it is really about me giving autonomy, trusting others that they got it, but also me receiving a certain level of security by earning trust. So by others trusting myself. So trust to me is more than a value. It's almost an intrinsic motivation and something that gets me going, something that I seek in my relationship. So I feel like my whole life story was shaped by a search for trust and a search for validation as well.
Oh my God, how beautiful. I really like what you said about the intrinsic motivation. And I can't wait to hear about that. And really, fun thing I saw on LinkedIn, one of those VPs, this guy, can't remember his name, but a guy that was very high at Amazon for many, many years. And he said that he never had one-on-one with his managers. And he was like, I don't need to have one-to-one with my leaders because I'm trusting them to being able to do their job. And I'm trusting them to come to me and escalate when they need for help. That for me was an interesting take on this point, because I spoke about it with my team this week. And I said, what would happen if we stopped having one-on-ones? I mean, you see me all the time. I'm here on the floor. You can approach me at any moment. So that's an interesting concept to explore. So tell me about your story. Like what happened?
Yeah. Probably in my trust story, there are, I think, two inflection points that happened, and they really occurred in the toughest moment of leadership. Trust was firstly part of my story because it was about the unexpected challenges of managing at scale in a global environment, and then really me figuring out how I extend trust to empower, and then also how I get out of the way. Getting out of the way was probably a key lesson learned for myself. So I'm taking you back to 2019, which was really a 10x shift in life. So I moved from Europe to Asia with a significant bump in roles and responsibilities. So I went from manage a team of 5 to 30 plus, managing at scale, regional delivery responsibilities, many changes. New team, new culture, new business norms. So in my first 6 months in this new role, I was overwhelmed in a constant search for security, trust, validation myself. So that experience wasn't just shaped by a rapid increase in role scope, rapid increase in complexity. It was raw, intimidating, and lonely as well. And I think that's a little bit where we want to dig into a bit more, because that was the tipping point in my career and in my life as well. I experienced a transition.
When you said managing at scale, is it because suddenly you had an extremely larger team, I assume?
Yeah, larger team in terms of size, but also scope, responsibility, seniority of stakeholders, the whole package.
Yeah. Oh my God, must have and especially with a pandemic upon you. What was the intimidating part? What made it so intimidating for you?
Yeah. I realized that some of the mindsets or principles that always served me really well didn't serve me any longer. So it felt like my toolbox was empty. So I didn't have the right techniques at the right time to be successful, to be motivated, to achieve results. So the principle of, if I don't step in, it won't happen, didn't serve me any longer. I really had to redefine how I show up in order to create clarity, and in order how I create motivation and progress for a 35 people organization that is made up of 15 plus cultures. So I was in a constant flux and redefining my leadership approach and my values.
So you did say some words that make me believe that something more than that happened. The way you laid it out, I'm like, I'm bracing for the worst here. What has happened in that moment that made it for you a pivotal moment in your life and your career?
Mm-hmm. So here's one thing that happened during this time. There was a real moment of truth. And it was created by a curious question asked by a peer at that time, someone who held up a mirror with their question. So it was a peer, and she asked me, so Kathrin, how comfortable are you with people achieving goals in a different approach from your preferred approach? So how are you promoting innovation? And there was a really uncomfortable mirror to look into and uncomfortable insight. That made me feel confused and insecure because I started realizing that I can promote innovation by creating a more trusted environment, but it required a pivot from inside myself. It required a pivot from me. So I needed to cultivate greater levels of trust with both my actions and my words, but I needed to let go. I needed to trust more.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure that this may resonate with a lot of our listeners, knowing our audience base. When you go from like the type of change that you've had, it feels to me that as a leader, one of our fears is that we almost feel useless. You know, when we have all of these people and we show up and everyone knows what to do and everyone knows how they do it and all of that, we even look ourselves in the mirror and say, but what is my role now? Like, if I'm not the one doing it, what am I doing? Like, what's my value? Like, do they even need me?
Yeah, that's what it felt. I needed to find my leadership value add. And then really going through these uncomfortable realizations combined with making mistakes does represent the human side of leadership. So for me, that was both self-awareness as the first layer and then adaptability as the second layer. When I say self-awareness, that was really realizing that I have a privilege as a manager to build trust and to create meaning beyond bottom line impact and profit. Yeah. But the second layer is that layer of adapting, right? For me to adjust my leadership style, like to really champion trust through my actions, not just the words. So I realized that I needed to produce results in a different way, going about it in a different way, empowering others more by getting out of the way.
Yeah. What made you realize that? Meaning, did you receive any escalations, or why you started having those red flags?
Yeah. I had a great manager at that point in time, like someone who gave me all the autonomy and control over how I do my work. So someone who truly enabled me to be autonomous, to lead the strategy for my team as well as the execution. And thinking back now, I understand her techniques. I understand her way of leading, and I had loads to learn from that. But to answer your question, Nadia, yes, I had people also come to me and say, Kathrin, I think you're the bottleneck here. Like you need to let us do it our way and see it through. It will be successful.
Wow, that must have been kind of harsh to receive.
It was a ugly mirror to look into, like the question I got from my peer. I'm really grateful for this, what we call pivotal moment, because it made me reflect and it felt uncomfortable, but it led to a pivot in how I show up.
The
what headline that
what happened? How did you change?
Yeah. So I think the headline here was really, I learned to extend trust by really giving others full responsibilities and ownership for projects, for KPIs. They deliver the outcomes and they tell me about it once it's done. So I figured that by delegating responsibility, delegating decision-making to both the managers in my team as well as everyone below, I nurture autonomy, I create accountability at the same time. And that is the true definition of trust as well in that moment. I had to go through the learning, through the mistakes, through the direct feedback, probably through the disappointment that I created before realizing it.
But you say the story as this was a walk in the park. I'm hearing you and I'm like, oh, okay, this sounded easy. But I'm sure that this was not that easy to accomplish and do. So how was Kathrin feeling deeply? And I get it that you're like, oh, that was the right thing to do. I need to get out of the way and all of that. But if I imagine, I mean, you were an immigrant in a country, and I had a lot of friends that were in Singapore back at the time. You guys were not even leaving your apartments. Like the legislation around the way the pandemic was managed was extremely brutal. And meanwhile, you had a new role and you had all these responsibilities coupled with these very harsh feedbacks that the way you were leading was not the way they were expecting in it. So I don't know if you had your son back then and if you had a family, but all of it sounded, it must have been extremely stressful.
Yeah. I think it was probably one of the most challenging moments in my time as a leader, where I've learned loads about myself, where I redefined some values, how I felt in real need of validation, in constant search of security and trust, being trusted. And I also felt lonely at times. Sometimes it can feel lonely as a leader, and I really had to find my tribe of allies as well and people around me to build up my motivation and to truly adapt and make those pivots in my leadership style. Yeah.
How do you take care of yourself in this whole thing? And who was helping you to see, as you said, your value? Who was validating those things for you?
Yeah. So honestly, validation was actually a mix of people, a mix of signals, and seeing outcomes, right? You experiment with new styles, you experiment with getting out of the way and empowering others more. So first signals, okay, I delegated, I fostered autonomy, I gave others control, and they do things brilliantly. So actually seeing the outcomes is one signal that I was getting, that some of the changes I'm making in how I'm showing up differently, how I'm producing results in a different way, is yielding some positive progress. Obviously, I had phenomenal manager helping me throughout this time of managing at scale, adjusting to a different culture. We were just about to go into COVID as well during this time. So there was a lot to process in terms of job complexity, as well as navigating your personal life and navigating a world that is full of relentless change.
Can I ask you a potentially difficult question?
Go for it.
When you think about what happened and when you think about the dynamics of that time, and when you think about the feedback you were getting at the beginning and how, it was stretched, have you ever wondered why did they hire you in the first place?
Yeah. I question myself, or we question ourselves all the time based on signals and feedback we get. But I think looking back at this now, I probably would analyze the situation differently than back then. But people had trust in me. So there was some set of people around me, they had trust in me, they put trust in me by firstly giving me the job, then coaching me through my path, helping me uncover changes that need to be made, and then also celebrating the successes along the way. So yes, there was self-doubt that was real. But I felt especially by the person who was leading me at that point in time, that they trusted me, and trust was and is a motivation for me. So it's both a skill and a motivation that helped me overcome difficult moments.
Well, I'll say, what about the trust in ourselves also?
Yeah.
We're recording days on International Women Day, and I'm always taken aback by how we women, we don't extend that trust to ourselves that much. And, you know, there's a lot of literature that says that a man would apply to a job even if they don't have all the uh, skills. And I mean, you are in talent and hiring, you know this better than I. So, why do you think? And I mean, this is a genuine question. Why do you think that with all the women that you might have interviewed as well in your role and all of the talents that you might have come across, why we don't trust ourselves?
That is a very deep question, Nadia. That's a why. But I think the answer everyone needs to find for themselves. Like, we need to instill trust in all directions, right? Up, down, sideways, and in ourselves. So your hypothesis that women have a lower tendency to trust themselves, then it's based on experiences. It's based on signals. So trust is a two-way street, right? You give and you receive. It's like a magnet. It gives and it pays forward. So maybe to validate your hypothesis, we would need to look at both sides of the trust magnet here, and how it shows up for women. And what in the environment and the experience for women is different. And especially different when it comes to trusting yourself. So I actually want to go back a little bit, because I have another story that is really about instilling trust in myself, looking actually at last year, at 2023. I moved continents again. So I moved from Europe, I moved from Asia back to Europe. I had a radical shift in my lifestyle, started a family, stepped into a global role at work, got laid off, started 2 new jobs in 1 year. I went into leading twice teams that were affected significantly by layoffs. The expectation was for me to lead large-scale transformation in, let's say, low-trust environments. And that was truly a moment or a lesson last year for me, where I really needed to understand my drivers and values and be willing to trust myself. So when I say trust myself, it was about firstly being confident in my strengths, connecting with my leadership values, knowing what they are to guide my approach, and not allowing ambiguity to sway me from the course that I was on. So I think that is one step that I experienced in terms of instilling trust in myself, like really being trusting my intuition.
I'm really glad that you are bringing the word intuition into the fold, because we all have this inner compass. And there are several ways of defining it. And technically speaking, women are very gifted with very strong intuition. I mean, we could open a whole chapter about spiritual work here that we're not going to open today, maybe another time. But I've been reading a publication lately that one of the challenge of human beings these days is that we don't allow ourselves to be in silence with our own bodies and brain enough to be able to listen to our intuitions. We're always running, we're always doing things. And, I'm a big fan. I've been reading a lot about meditation and the impact both from a scientific perspective, but also spiritual perspective. And what's fascinating is that when you ask people, what do they want? And when you ask people, what is the direction that they're taking and what do they want to do with something? When they take the time to listen to themselves and to their intuitions, they actually know. So this leads me to believe that we all human know what we have in our inner body. And the moment we pause to listen to it, that's the moment where we get that trust and confidence to go after whatever it is that we're doing in that moment.
Yeah, very beautiful said. Yeah. I think it's about, can I add one more
Please
comment
go.
here? Because we talked about trusting our intuition. I think it's also trusting each other, trusting others, also being willing to follow, right? Asking for help and seek help from the female powerhouses around you, and really using others to help you look beyond the obvious if you're stuck, or if you're in a difficult moment in your personal life or in your leadership journey. I think that's important as well. Trusting others and being willing to follow them.
I love that. I mean, in the quantum physics world, they would say they were all at one, at quantum level. There's no differences. This has been such a pleasure having you today, Kathrin. There's two more questions that we always ask our guests. And, I'm sad Jeff is not here today. I think he's traveling back from New York, but he would have loved this conversation. And the question we ask, so one question is, what is your word of advice for everyone that is listening this episode today that you want to give them?
Yeah. My words of wisdom: instill trust in yourself and in your team to shape the wave. And I'm going to use the analogy of a surfer to kind of articulate the meaning of human leadership in today's world. So when we look at the waves of change, they've become the new normal in our daily life. Leadership is more than riding the waves of change. I believe real leadership is about actually changing the waves. It's changing the shape of the wave and leveraging the disruptive potential of the wave. So instill trust in yourself and in your team to shape the wave, and progress will come from redirecting the current.
I really love this concept of redirecting the current. I never thought about it that way. Really special. Thank you for sharing this metaphor. It's very applicable. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as every recruiter and talent acquisition professional. So feel free to reach out.
Well, I hope you all do, because Kathrin is very special. I will be forever grateful to you, Kathrin, because you did change my life 15 years ago. And I wish for everyone to develop a relationship with their recruiter as beautiful as the one that you and I have. So thank you for coming on the show. I wish you a great weekend in Germany. And for everybody else, if you liked the show today, please give us 5 stars. It really helps with all the algorithms. And we hope you will tune in for this and next ones. Bye, everyone.